trying to get a view of this. So here's the wheel well, and you can see where it's rusted out here. And I think what the problem is, this is a fibrous kind of inner fender liner, and it's made to cut down sound, but it probably holds in the water. And when it's sitting next to the metal, it holds that water in there, doesn't allow it to drain out, and you obviously get rust. Now it won't rust down, it did rust here, but it won't rust down on the bottom sides as much because the water can run off. But right at the top here, the water sticks there. I don't know if I'm seeing what I'm seeing. The water sticks there and it's too flat to really run off. So it's probably sitting there and it's rusting out the metal. So I'm gonna repair this chunk. I'm gonna coat the hell out of it with some rock guard or whatever you call it, underliner, and then I'll put that back into place. I've got the first layer of Bondo on here, along with the mesh. I'm just letting that dry. I'm gonna fill it in more all the way along there and fill in the low spots there to get that done. Now, what I'm doing on the other side, I'll show you. What I've got outmasked here though is, this is the face, and this is where it transitions into the body. And this face is nice and flat all the way around there. So that's why I've got that. I'm going to try and keep the paint and everything onto this face, and then I can do the clear cut and blend it in a little bit, and then sand that whole surface. But for the main paint part and everything, I'm keeping it to this little area, so that's one flush face there. I'm doing the other side a little different. I'm gonna do this little bit right here. I've got it all sanded down and cleaned out. I use a sander, and then I use, it's actually used for doing brakes and stuff. I grinded it right down to get right in there to get all the rust out. I'm going to do this surface in this small little area with the Bondo in here. Just a tiny little bit. Then I will go up underneath and tackle that after, so that it's I'll do this surface, which is nice and solid all through there. And then the back surface, I'm going to add, because you can see there's some rust there where that body part is kind of rusted away. I'm going to do that afterwards so that I can concentrate on getting this done and then build up that back afterwards. I'm going to see how that works. I'm no body man, but we're going to try it. All right. This has been sanded and filled. I've got that fiberglass cloth that wraps around like this, and on the back side, I'm going to worry about that later. It's rough right now. I'll sand that and then prime it and paint it with a little bed liner kind of a thing. Remember, this is just that flat surface where it transitions up. So I'm going to spread some primer just on this. I've wrapped some paper around and looped it to make a soft edge here. So once we get a couple coats of primer on there, sand the primer, and so it's good and smooth, then we'll move this soft edge back and we'll just spray on there so it transitions up onto that other surface, and then the clear coat on that. And that way, the transition from, car is 11 years old, so the paint color is probably going to be a little different than the original. So that's why you just want that paint on here. It's not going to be as noticeable because that transition is going to happen. I'm going to, when I paint it, you'll see I'm just going to transition it up a little bit so it just gets on the other side of that to transition it. But for now, I'm just going to set the primer on here. There's just a little bit of bare metal down along this edge. The rest is blended in already with that body filler up there. Let's see how this goes. I can't do it. I've only got one hand. Here's where we're at now. So I sanded it, got it down to the bare metal, hammered it in right here, used a little of a fiberglass cloth and bondoed it in, let that dry, sanded it, added a layer of finishing compound to that to get it level. And once we got it all, it was fair size, about that big where the rust was. In the back, I've got it all built up. I'll show you that later. When that was done, nice and sanded, nice and smooth, laid down some filler primer, laid down a couple layers of that, sanded it, laid down a couple more, sanded it, made sure it's nice and smooth all the way. Then hit it with some paint. I did 4 coats of matching paint. And then I think I put 5 coats of clear on there. And it actually turned out pretty good. I don't know how well you can see it. I didn't get really any eggshelling. I used a little, watch Chris Fix on YouTube, and he does a really good job of explaining it. I don't know if you can see there, but to stop the eggshelling, I did what he said, and he put it, the clear coat, he put it in hot water between coats, and that seemed to work. Now I'm going to get start at 1,000 grit, 1,500, 2,500, and 3,000 grit, and sand an area about like that. And I painted all down here. There's actually a little ding right there on the door jamb that I covered up as well. I'm going to sand it and buff it and see what happens. You can see right here that it's rough there. That's where it was blending in. This is good solid. This is blended, so we'll sand all that down and then buff it and see how it turns out. But so far I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to get on the back in there. There's a good layer of fiberglass in there. I'm going to build that up with some Bondo so that the water, when it runs down on the back side of the fender, will roll off. There was kind of a flat spot there where the water was just sitting on the fender liner, and that's probably what caused the rust, and that's on both sides. So I'm going to try and fix that so that the water will run straight off on there. I built it up so the water can't really sit on top. I built it up so that the water will drip right off. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Let's get on with it and sand it and buff it up and see how it looks, and then set it outside and see how it looks in the sun. That's the big test. I'm pretty happy with the coloration. That car is 10 years old, so I imagine there's going to be some fading, and that's why I wanted just to stick to here, but I did go up, so we'll have to buff that out and see how it blended in. Did a pretty good job of blending from about here up. Like I said, I wanted to keep this edge, was only where the damage was done. It was hard to keep the paint just on there because the damage went right up to there just about, so you need some surface. You're going to have a hard line on there if you're just going to paint this, and I didn't want a hard line in there, so we'll see how it works. All right. Back at it. A little smoky out there from all the forest fires. Now, I'm just finishing up on my quarter panel here. I need to buff it out a little bit more. It doesn't have the shine that I want, but it turned out all right. Pretty smooth. Blended in all right. I actually went 4x4, and so I've got more scratches in there now. But it looks all right. This bumper was originally dented in pretty good. I buffed it out, sprayed it, it was all scratched, so it came out all right there as well. That original scratch is dented right in there. I'm not too worried about that. I got rid of most of it. And then on the other side, scratches again. I was up at the property and pretty tight logging roads and stuff. But that turned out all right. There is one little blemish. And I could have probably sanded that out. Right there. I'm not going to be too worried about that. I like the car, I'm going to keep it. But again, that whole quarter panel was all rusted out right there. So I smoothed that out, painted it up. Same on this one. That was all rusted out right there. So I painted it all. And it looks alright. Needs some wax, needs a little more buffing maybe, but turned out pretty good. And like I mentioned, what I did on the inside, it's got a fabric fender liner in there. I pulled that out, pulled the wheel off, and got right up top there, because the water was coming down, and I think it was sitting there with the fabric and just allowing the water to sit there and rust through there. So I built it up on the inside so that the water runs right off, and that should be good for the next 10 years or so. It's already 13 years old, so if it lasts another 10 years, I'll be happy. Now, back to the plane.